Well, we know that to abandon life is not to sit and wait for God to rain largesse on our heads. And this was not this man's intent. He was dedicated to devoting his life to being able to earn a place in heaven, so to speak. When there was food, he ate. He fasted a great deal. His thoughts were always on God. But, as these things go, his dedication became known to people of the village, so they would come by and they would give him crusts of bread or a bowl of milk from time to time. And sometimes the shepherds would come by to sit quietly with him. But there was a time when days passed when no one came. At first, his absorption in meditation did not allow the pangs of hunger and thirst to become predominant in his being. But after a few days, his stomach began to grumble, and his tongue was dry on the roof of his mouth with thirst. But no one came. No crust of bread or bowl of milk came his way. So finally, feeling giddy with hunger and unable to resist any longer, he left his cave and climbed down the mountain. He walked and walked. He found a stream at which he was able to slake his thirst, but his belly still growled with hunger. But he followed the stream until it brought him to a small village which he could see in the distance. But in front of his eyes, as they wandered up to where the village was situated, was a field of corn. He could not help himself but run into this field where the corn was ripe, and breaking off those juicy heads, he ate until his belly was full. Then he lay down and snoozed for a little before going up the mountain again to his cave. But when he entered the cave and sat down in lotus position to resume his meditations, meditation would not come. And when he slept, his dreams were varied and punishing. Widows with starving children. In his meditations, he began to wonder who he had deprived of their livelihood by eating those ears of corn. He was so bedeviled, he could bear it no longer. So he headed down the mountain again and towards the village he had seen. When he entered the village, an old woman invited him back for some freshly baked bread and a bowl of curd. But he asked, who was it who owned a field of corn. And sure enough, he discovered that that field belonged to a widow who had 3 children. He was mortified. Retribution. What could he do? He knew that he was bound by karma. But he went back to his cave and he prayed, please, if I must make recompense for this wrongdoing, may my karma be instant and not be prolonged, so that I can hasten my ability to be worthy of entering the realms of heaven. Well, because of his asceticism, his dedication to God, his wish was granted, and he became a bullock and found himself on the edge of the very stream from which he had drunk. He ate grass, but it so happened that there was a farmer living nearby who had lost his bullock, and of course without a bullock he was unable to till his fields, and he was poor. He had no way to buy a new animal. So when he saw this young, fine, fit bullock wandering by the stream, he wondered who it belonged to and how he might be able to obtain it. So he made inquiries, but it belonged to no one, because he thought that maybe he could bargain with its owner and maybe pay back whatever price was decided on, little by little. But when it was found that the bullock belonged to no one, he thanked Providence, he thanked God, and took the bullock and tethered it to the yoke that would enable him to till his fields. The life of a bullock is very hard. Day after day, he ploughed, he carried the loads of the farmer, but he knew that having this instant karma, this life would be short, because he recalled totally what it was that had brought him to this place. He lived his life in hard work with the farmer, and in due time he died. The farmer took his skin and tanned it. He threw the innards and entrails out for the wild animals to eat. He dried the skull, and dressing it in the garb of a scarecrow, he put it out in the middle of his field to scare away the birds. But one night, after a day, when the farmer, who had obtained another bullock, had reaped all the wheat from the abundant harvest of that time, and put it in sacks. But after a day of work he was too tired to take it back to his barn, so he left the sacks of wheat in the field and went home to a repast and a good night's rest. In the night, a bright moonlight night with the stars shining, so that there was clearness in the sky, 3 robbers came by, and noticing the sacks of wheat, could not believe their luck. How easy it was to put the sacks of wheat on their back and carry it off. But just when they were carrying away the sacks, eerie laughter rang out in their ears, and they looked around to find out where this was coming from. But nothing was to be seen. And so they were about to set out on the road again, when again the laughter and guffawing rang in their ears. And they dropped their sacks once again and looked around. And then suddenly they saw the bullock's skull on the top of the garb of the scarecrow, and realized that it was its clacking teeth and the sound of the wind blowing. But then the laughter rang out again, and the robbers were very afraid. But one robber, with a bit of bravado, said, "What are you doing, you stupid skull, frightening us like that?" And to their very great surprise, the skull answered and said, "I'm laughing because I am wondering, what punishment will God give you? I was an ascetic, and I took some heads of corn, for which I became a bullock and toiled for a long life before being dismembered and my skull being placed on this stake. I wonder what punishment will be yours when you are stealing the entire livelihood of the farmer's family." Now the thieves were very afraid and very contrite. They ran away, leaving the sacks of wheat behind, and promising in their hearts never to steal again. Well, this skull did not know what it was that befell the 3 robbers, because after this, the ascetic's soul had long since found its place in heaven. This story, like many, many of the stories, allows and absolutely confirms for us that those 3 levels of existence or mind, that level of cause and effect or karma, that level of the occult, of dreams, imagination, intuition, and that level of interrelatedness or oneness can come together seamlessly. But the question that's asked of us, from where do these stories arise? Where is the meeting place of those 3 levels of mind? We know it's not on that level of interrelatedness or oneness, because this too is a level of mind. Could it be, is it possible, if we put this question together with the science of the physicality of mysticism, where it said, take all perceptions from the sensual, the aesthetic, and the transcendent level of mind, and bring them to the subtle level of body, speech, and mind. The body of appearances, the speech of vibrations, and the mind of awareness, where they flow down the columns at the side of the spine, the subjective and objective, positive and negative, to meet at the base of the spine and rise up in the central column of pure mind, to emerge as our thoughts and our deeds. If stories can bring together all the levels of existence or mind, and stories emanate from our being, where do they meet these three levels of existence? Is there a relationship between the process of the intake of perceptions, which elicit from us those thoughts and those deeds? Where is the meeting place? Where do they merge? In the mysticism, the perceptions are taken in, brought to the subtle level of mind if we have spiritual awareness, and passed down the columns and merge. Or do they merge? Or do they cancel one another out? Where is this place from where the stories emanate, where the three levels of life, mind, existence meet? What's the answer to this question that arises for you? The level of cause and effect, the level of our imagination, our dream, our intuition, our creativity, and that level where we live and recognize the interrelatedness of all things. Where do they meet? In us.